Welcome back to the Pain Changer podcast. This is episode 72, and I'm your host, Katie Wrigley. You may be surprised to see another episode from me with my recent announcement that I was pausing this show for a while. This is a special episode, and the first I've done with video, as you can see, and the first one that is going to have no editing. This is going to be first cut. You guys are going to see it raw. Someone gave me the great advice to not be so black and white about pausing this podcast, and when I felt called to do an episode, then I should feel free to do so. So with that advice, today's guest inspires me so much that I had to ask him to join me. Chad Bruckner is a motivational speaker, author, and police life coach. Chad is a retired police detective from Pennsylvania and an Army combat veteran. Chad served for 21 years in government service. I met Chad at a wellness conference in June for first responders that was held in Portland, Maine. Chad spoke at the conference, and what he had to say was incredibly important and very inspiring. And he's also one of the first men that I've heard mention Brene Brown by name because he is familiar with her work, which, my friends, is a man worth listening to. Chad is about to launch, actually already launched, an incredible book that I've already purchased in this pre-sale called The Holy Trinity of Successful and Healthy Police Organizations. And we'll make sure that we cover that in today's episode so you can grab your copy as well. Welcome to the Pain Changer podcast, Chad.
Katie, what is going on? Thanks for having me on. This is awesome. I really appreciate it. Seriously, you're just incredible that it's your first one, and I'm grateful. Your first one on video, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. So thanks. I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, well, I had to have you on here as when your book was coming out. You know, originally we'd schedule this to do it before the book launched. The book launched on Friday, so it is now out. People can actually buy this. And before we dive into it, I want to give a sincere thank you for all your years of service, both in the Army and in the police force. That is not an easy call to action. And thank you so much for the years of service and what you sacrificed for our country and for those in Pennsylvania.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate it. It's an honor. It really is. I never looked at it as anything other than service and what I'm wired to do. I tried jobs where I'm not serving people, and it didn't work out too well for me. So thank you. It's been an honor. I love being an American and a patriot. And yeah, let's get into brain health and mental health and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So would you be willing to share a little bit of your background that led you to what you're doing today, Chad?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I grew up in a very tight nuclear family. Grew up low income, I'd say. We had a period of a lot of money, then some things went south, and I'm the oldest kid. So I got to experience some of those experiences growing up, what that was like with money being tight and things like that. And I think that really set me on an early path to leadership, a path to empathy and understanding people and seeing through their mask, through their pain. So this is a long journey for me. So I went in the Army at 17. I didn't have a lot of options, didn't do the great in school, and felt called. I come from a military family, so going into the military was very simple for me. I enlisted, ended up serving for 4 years, but really did 8. Went in during 9/11, happened during my first enlistment, and that changed, I think, the lives for so many of us.
Yeah.
Served for 8 years in the Army, served a combat tour in Iraq, was grateful to lead a squad there, and we all made it home alive. Of course, some of us didn't, and those are things that I carry with me for a long time, and some of those experiences. So interestingly, I never wanted to be a police officer. It was not something I was passionate about. I grew up in a town, great community, great little town, but my little town, my experience growing up was traffic. So I think 16 or 17, I got 2 traffic tickets. Cops were great to me, but that was my perspective of policing. I didn't have any family members, so it wasn't until I came back from Iraq where we did a lot of para law enforcement operations, cultivating confidential informants, using intelligence to help rid of bad guys in the community, intermingling of citizens and bad guys. It was just a experience for me. I said, wow, I think this might be what policing is like. So I came back and was full speed ahead. I ended up serving 13 years in law enforcement, did many roles in patrol, detective, was an undercover. I loved every bit of it. I had all 3 kids on the job. I got married as a cop. So that 13 years was some of the most profound, impactful experience of my life. Like combat, it was just a different type of experience. So I've been one of those people, luckily, that able to always pull those experiences and kind of mesh them together and use those to help me through the next journey. So everything's kind of led me to the next step, the next step, the next step. So 2021, I took an early retirement. It wasn't a goal of mine. It wasn't the plan. I just got my master's degree at that time. I thought I was kind of, not that I thought I was working hard to get promoted, be the next chief there one day. And There were some experiences there that changed that were outside of my control, and I didn't expect them, and I didn't see them coming. And that blindsidedness, I think, threw me for a loop, and I experienced some severe mental health challenges. And it was that depression I had to battle back in 2019 to, first of all, that depression almost led me to want to kill myself. The shame that I carried, I actually, glad you asked me this, Katie, the first chapter of the book is called Shame, because it's really what I think holds so many of us back. And I write this book from a lived experience perspective. So it's but I'd be foolish to think that I'm the only one in the world who goes through these. So, but it was that personal shame that really held me back so much. Being the father I wanted to be, being a husband I wanted to be, the true husband and father, being the cop I wanted to be, the soldier, the neighbor, all those roles. I never felt like I was able to max out or hit my full potential because I didn't love myself as much. And I had a lot of personal shame and that low self-esteem. So 2019, I just committed myself. I have a great wife, and I really believe that it was my love for my wife and my kids that was that recovery capital that I learned in recovery treatment or recovery training and certification. But it's that recovery capital. So they were just my why. They were that carrot in front of me. I had to keep fighting and grinding for it. I didn't want to leave my kids without dad. And my wife deserves so much better. So I'm grateful for that, because that really fostered me to chase every bit of myself. For the last 4 years, I've done so much work: mental health, emotional health, physical health. I'm in recovery now. I got certified as a recovery specialist. I'm now a life coach for police departments. And it's just a full circle moment for me. Is the coaching I wish I would have had as a cop, because maybe I would have stayed on the job. But that wasn't available then. That wasn't the path for me then. So now I'm a coach. I love nothing more to want to help cops thrive, survive, stay in the job. Maybe they have to leave. Maybe they're in a culture where it's not healthy, and the only way they can heal like me is I had to go somewhere. I had to leave to heal. But what if we could have them heal right where they're at, right in their agency, so they don't have to leave? I think that's what coaching, what you're doing with your cognitive movement, it's really going to be the next gen. I mean, we're on the forefront, I think, of human development and performance.
I hope so. And I love what you said there, and there is a difference, and it seems to come from the chief level. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I've never been a first responder or in law enforcement. But what I realize is my own history, my nervous system used to run very similarly to the way that first responders run, which made it very easy for me to relate to the things that you guys deal with. And so the culture is going to come from the chief. If the chief is about mental health and wellness, like Chief Moya, who put together the conference in Portland, he is all about health and wellness and making sure his officers have a healthy place. They have healthy outlets. Not every chief does that. And what kind of effect does that have if you do not have a chief that has bought into the importance of mental and physical health? And we'll go into the correlation here in a moment, but what do you see happens in those cultures that don't have that backing from the chief level down?
They're toxic. They're unwell. They're unsustainable. They're not winnable cultures. And I write a lot about this in the book. They're cultures where we're not supposed to succeed. They're cultures where success is not part of the prescription. And I talk about this. Interestingly, I heard a story today about a former chief that I know very closely who is not a mental health advocate, yet is this 2023 platform his 2023 platform is mental health, and he sends emails out about it, but there's no action, there's no substance, there's no passion behind it. The officers see that, they know that. It's now become a joke. And so we got to help chiefs stop walking or stop talking the talk. You got to walk the walk. And if you don't know how to walk the walk, there are people to help you. I'll help you. Katie can help you. Chief coach, there's executive coaches out there. Maybe you're uncomfortable, you want another chief, but there are options out there. But ignorance, ineptitude, they're not valid excuses anymore. And I think we covered up for them for so long. And there's going to be a reckoning. There has to be a reckoning, because their numbers are so low, and that pendulum's going to swing back the other way.
I hope so. And, when you're talking about those toxic environments, that's where we see those cringeworthy headlines that no one wants to see in the news, especially not any officer that I've ever met. The George Floyds and those events, I think everybody that I met in law enforcement has a stronger reaction than regular civilians from seeing that, because those that are mentally health aware understand how avoidable something like that is.
It's so true. And you hit this on the head, because I think a lot of elected officials don't understand what a good police executive is. They don't know how to select them, yet their governing bodies are in charge of hiring them because of these processes and processes that we have currently. And what I talk about in the book is there is a different way. and I give a different way. I outline the different way. And I think it's going to be the way to bring everybody back. It's the way to keep and retain great people. It is leading with the heart. It is understanding human connection, understanding. I think of all these cops that get into a situation and they get arrested, and there's a video camera, almost every single one, I want to know who the chief is. Mm-hmm. I want to know what that culture is. I want to talk and have a conversation, because I bet you I can figure out what's going on there. Is it that individual officer, or is he a byproduct of a system that you are now casting to the side and the criminal justice system is casting to the side? We're not asking those questions. And those are the questions I want to ask. I want to start asking those questions. Who is your leader? Who is your chief? How did you get to be where you are? Who trained you? Who nurtured you? Who developed you? I want to know.
Those are really important questions. What did your time with the police force and with the Army teach you about the correlation between mental health and the physical body?
Yeah, it's so correlated, Katie. And I didn't know a lot of this. So this is the scary part. And this is part of my mission and my movement is illuminating this for cops and soldiers, because I didn't know this. And I had 21 years as a soldier in combat, then became a cop, led my agency to arrest, did a lot of high stressful stuff. I didn't know anything about the correlation between the mind, the emotions, and the body. Mm-hmm. So in 2019, when I was through a full depression, the personal shame I was feeling, I put on weight. I started to drink. Had no idea how that was all playing a part in itself. So it's funny, we talk about this, you and me have talked about this before in recovery, and I put this in the book because it's hard. It's going to be hard for a lot of cops to read, but it is the truth. And I'm not a judgmental person, but what I say is, far be it for me to tell you what to put in your body, because I've made bad decisions in my life, but we will never be as good as we can be. We will never reach our full potential, ever, for when we put substances in our body. It's not possible. We have become, even minimal, we have become slave to that self-medication, that juice we use to fill our cup or fill the gaps. I understand why we do it, but it's not sustainable. We'll never reach our full potential. And so many leaders in law enforcement are hitting the bottle, are using pills, are overworked, they're overstressed, they're not dealing with themselves, and they are taking hostages along the way in their agencies. Not just the cops, their families too.
Yep. I agree. And so I wanted to ask that question on the heel of, when you see these headlines, you go into the chief, because if you don't have that awareness and the answer to those questions, like who nurtured you? Like if I just figured it out as I went, I didn't have any real mentors, or my mentor maybe was an old school cop that has the suck it up mentality and just deal with it. And as soon as you watch a horrific incident, like someone committing suicide, or you're part of an active shooting, get right back to work, no debrief, just go. That is really going to have a massive impact, not only on their physical body, but on their ability to perform and be able to respond to other cases with a rational mind.
It's the only way we make good decisions, I think, if we're clear-minded. There's so much pressure and stress in law enforcement. They're highly dynamic environments, very fluid. Every day is different. So the executives we promote or hire to fill those spots, they have to be highly dynamic. They have to be fluid. They have to be intuitive. They have to be emotional. They have to be compassionate. They have to be an active listener. They have to be physically fit. They have to be emotionally well. You have to, because what you're dealing with is so much. You have to be that. Imagine if you're a chief, and there's a lot of them who aren't any of those things, and yet you're dealing with officers who are mentally unstable, community issues. How can you possibly win? You can't. It's an unsustainable, untenable track.
I agree. And especially with the precincts that I'm working with here, they're seeing a rise in people who have mental illness that they're coming across on the street. So there's a whole other level of awareness that's now needed, not just to helping the officers, but having the officers help people that they're meeting on the street, both identifying what they're seeing and getting them the resources that they need for help.
100%. The best leaders I've been around, and I've been around some many great ones that were the most ethical, moral, godlike, and I hate to say that, but when I was 17, 18 and so impressionable, these are men that had great character. And one of the things, they all had the ability to communicate. Strong communicators. They weren't the wisest. They didn't have all the answers, but they could listen. They could share. They could be vulnerable. They could connect you with somebody who does know if they don't know. That is the essence of leadership. And I think in police work, we have gotten away from that. In military is the same way in a large respect. This whole suck it up, take a knee and drink water, go see the shrink. The chief executive, the chief leader of a police department has amazing power and influence to do great good or to do great bad. So, and specifically, we're talking about mental health for their officers. I know so many chiefs, Chief Moya, Chief Gang out in California. who have created the Zen Den in this police department. So, I mean, there are so many good chiefs and good leaders. I don't want to say like there aren't that are doing those things, but they value wellness. They value the officers. They know their officers are the largest, most important asset of the agency. That's how they lead. So we have to get away from the cars and the guns and the SWATs and the community perspectives and what the neighboring chief thinks of you. We got to get away from all that. What do your officers think? How are your officers? Evaluate them. Do an assessment. Do a blind study. Right? Talk to them. The problem is, I think we don't want the truth. I know we don't want the truth. Most times, the truth is the scariest thing in the world to some people, and it's that truth really is the light in our eyes. That's how we get to where we need to get to, is through that truth. But we just have to be willing to accept it first.
And that can be hard with the officers that I worked with that are also in leadership positions. One of the most important things to them is the wellness of their team. Over and over and over again. And when it is that important to you, it can be hard to hear where you may be falling short, but it's important because that information allows you to step up your game. So one of the pieces that's the most important to you in your job, you're going to be banging out of the park every single day. And no matter what else happens, you have made sure your team is well as best as you can.
Very good, Katie. Yeah. It's funny you say that. Sometimes when we're being told feedback, and this is good, like I give this example of my wife. I don't like some of the things she says to me because it's true.
No, it's not.
It's true. And it just happened recently. I stood up, put my hands behind my back, I gritted my teeth, and I took it. I sat there and I took it, and I didn't say a word. And I came back later and I said, you know what? I thought about what you said and you're right. It wasn't easy. It's never easy, but it's the only way. Because what happens is in marriages and families and workplaces, if we don't communicate and we're not honest and accountable like that, and I worked in a place like this, it erodes, it falls apart, the fabric, the identity, it gets really confusing and murky, and the moral injury spikes up because we don't know the rules. What are the rules here? And it's a game that we have to avoid. We can do it by being honest, being trustworthy, and leading with the heart, for sure.
I love that, leading with the heart. And when we're talking about feedback, we're not talking about beating someone up and criticizing them. We're talking more about holding that loving mirror from someone you trust, whether it's a mentor, a friend, a partner, a wife, husband, whatever it may be. And that's a skill to learn on its own. Like there's a big difference between you're being a jerk and, hey, honey, why are you doing these things? Or what am I seeing here as you doing these things? And it takes a while to figure out that filter between those people. And it takes a lot of trust to get to
you're
that
right.
point.
And this is where I think you're having a lot of success. And this is where I'm kind of getting into it now, and I really want to help men. It's really a larger issue about men. A lot of men didn't have good dads to teach them how to be a good man. They weren't shown how to be empathetic and strong. They weren't shown how to be compassionate and tough. They weren't shown, so they're these emotions in these fatherless men, or these men that don't have great fathers or role models. I'm a man. We have passion. We have testosterone. We have to get it out, but we need someone to model that behavior for us. And it's not model good behavior. It show us when times are bad, how that man acts. And that's what I've been so focused on around men is, I coach youth sports, and in the stressful, the most critical moments, watch me. I won't have all the answers, but I want other men to see that there's the other way other than yelling or screaming or fighting or outbursts. Sometimes the greatest thing we can do is when we don't know is just stop and think for a second. Stop and think. I don't need to react. I don't need to say anything. I don't need to know anything. I just need to think for a second. And that lack of reactionary, I think, goes a long way in interpersonal teams, in police departments, where I write about this in my book too, is if you give if any leader any person gives a negative comment to somebody, generally, and if it wasn't warranted, generally it was going to take three positive affirmations to kind of counteract that negative for that person to be like, oh, maybe they're just having a bad day. So imagine if you're that leader that's always doing that, but you're also not doing the three kind things. You're not following up a kind gesture to show your people maybe you're having a bad day. You're just constantly riding them and being negative. Over time, and in a very short period of time, that culture is going to erode and people are going to leave, and they're going to look for better opportunities. That's what organizational culture is. There are better options out there to be well, to be healthy, to feel purposeful. And I think cops are starting to understand that. So I want to help bring it back like you are. Let's bring them back. Let's keep them well. Let's fill the ranks back up with good quality police officers.
Absolutely. I would love to see that happen, and it also takes support from family and from partners, for men who are in a heterosexual partnership. The woman needs to allow space for the man to be empathetic and vulnerable and still respect him and still find him sexy and all of those things. And that takes a lot of work on the woman's side. And we are just now getting to a point where it's like, hey, the man needs space to do this. If you want him to show up and be all the things you want him to be, you need to also let him have his space to do this and respect him and love him and give him that space without judging him.
That's a great point.
So important. It has to be a two-way street. You can't.
And that's the only way men. Yeah, that's the only way men can thrive. I have a great wife who is supportive of that. And really, over the last 4 years, she told me that, I can't believe I'm saying this. She's like, "You're the sexiest you've ever been to me because of your soul and your heart and your character." And it's funny that I spent so much time working out or when I was in the Army, especially, of just trying to be this macho guy, because that's what tough is. That's what sexy is. That's what success is. And there's times and place for that. Don't get me wrong. You have to be a man when there's time to be a man, but you don't have to be a man 24/7 in the sense of, we're not hunting saber-tooth tigers 24/7. We're not harvesting our food 24/7. Not everyone's out to get us 24/7. So if we get out of that mindset and understand when the enemy appears, I have to be a general and fight.
Yeah.
But when the enemy's not appear, I'm going to take care of my family. I'm going to show my sons how to be a man. I'm going to show my daughter how to pick a husband one day. That's where my mindset is right now.
Yeah. And a man who has the ability to be vulnerable, authentically vulnerable, not doing it to manipulate, that is hot when it is someone that you're attracted to. So I love that your wife gave you that feedback. I would imagine, like, if I had a partner right now, like the last partner I had, that made him sexier to me when he was able to do that. Absolutely.
It's connection. It's collaboration. It's, it's funny. My growing up with my father, he would always tell me, he's a very empathetic guy, also very tough-minded guy. So I had a great influence there. Grew up in the poor Jewish kid in Philadelphia, getting picked on and bullied, don't learn how to fight. But I watched the way he treated my mom. I watched the way it wasn't always good. There were a lot of negatives, but I watched him apologize. I watched him repent. I watched him come back. And I didn't even realize as a kid how much he was helping me with that. I thought it was a negative thing, but then I grow up and I'm around people who they can't apologize. They can't own their behavior. They take hostages. And when they acknowledge that they take hostages, instead of coming back and apologizing, owning it, they go further. They do more because of the shame.
Mm-hmm.
And as I apologize, I make mistakes in the world. We all do. And I realize that a lot of people aren't apologizing. That's where you start to find people that are attracted to that energy. And you want to surround yourself with people like that, like accountable, helpful, collaborative people. And there are so many of those out there too. So finding those and surrounding yourself with those, I think is a good recipe.
Absolutely. And I want to make sure that we have time to talk about your amazing book that was just released. So tell us a little bit about how leadership, culture, and wellness intersect to create a positive workspace. And then we want to make sure that we have a link. We'll put it in the show notes so that people can go out on Amazon, grab your book, and read it for themselves.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. The book is something I never actually wanted to write. I didn't plan on writing. It wasn't a goal of mine. It was, I think, like all great things, it was a genesis out of some pain I was feeling and wanted to turn that pain into purpose. And, I left the police department, my head really low. I don't know everything, but I have a good sense of culture and leadership. And I think I understand how we can be successful as a group and a team. And when I kind of found myself on the outside of greed and selfishness, and I thought, man, like, our virtue has gone down as an agency. Our identity of service first has just gone away. It's about who's jockeying for promotions. And so I left my head low, and I never wanted to write a book. I never wanted to be a cop again. I think at the conference you spoke to, I opened it up by saying, I hated you all. And I did. I was so resentful for the first 6 months because I felt like, why am I not still there? Like, why did I have to leave? Why did he go? And so you battle, you go through all those trials and tribulations. So when I got healthy and really committed myself to owning every single thing in my life, as I did that and got healthy, I realized, and more importantly, talked to so many people around the country, so many police officers. That was really the mechanism. Was over the last 2.5 years, I've gotten well, I've gotten healthy, I've connected with so many people. So I'm trying to move on and do a different thing. And I'm getting kind of pulled back to, and this is really the first time I'm thinking about this, pulled back to hearing so many cops around the country who went through the same thing. They're in the middle of it now, going through what I went through. And it was just praying and praying. It was like, I think God needs me to, I don't know, fight or do something, because so as much as I wanted to run away from it, it was like writing this book was a labor of love to all the cops out there who were struggling, and to stakeholders. We got to do a better job. We got to hire better executives. We got to promote better. We can't have self-service or special interest groups come in that lobby to get certain executives in charge because of the political subterfuge and all this stuff going on. The merit and the best of the best have to rise, or we're going to have a system like we have right now. And so that's what it was. It's just I just prayed a lot, and it came together with this book and the holy trinity of successful and healthy police organizations. And I believe culture, leadership, and wellness. You have to have all three intertwined. I believe culture is the number one thing, but you have to get to a strong culture. You have to have strong leadership, and you have to be well. I've been in really highly performing squads and units. I've also been in ones that weren't. The common theme is we were generally healthy. We were generally pushing in the same direction. And we were generally had a purpose of what we were serving. It wasn't about us. It was about something else. And when you have people together that are pushing in the same direction, are generally healthy, or at least mindful of health, and mindful of self-care, you can have conflict. You can have down days. You work through all that stuff. Momentum picks up and you get through all that. So that's what the nexus of the book was. We got to get all three working together. When you get all three working together, you won't have to recruit, ladies and gentlemen. You won't have to recruit. They will come to you. Just like a sports team. People want to go play for the New York Yankees. Why? Because they want to win. They hear good things, and it's the same thing. That word will get out. Go work for that department. That chief is amazing. Do you know what that chief's doing over there? And people their eyes will get bigger. Their mouths will get bigger. They'll emote. They'll use real passionate stuff because they haven't seen this before. Well, you're going to start seeing a lot more of it. There's got to be more empathetic chiefs. We got to get more of them. We got to get rid of the toxicity. And that's what this book is for. We're going to do it. I know we are.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm fully behind you on that mission. And we really need new recruits coming in. The overall recruitment level is way down nationally. And who can blame them with all the crap that we're seeing in the news?
Yeah. I mean, the next gen, I'm sorry to cut you off, Katie. I was just talking to a cop today during lunch, and we're talking about this. And he was kind of disagreeing with me. And I said, I understand your perspective. What I'll say is 30 years ago, you didn't have to recruit. 30 years ago, you didn't have to treat people like gold. We can argue that left and right, but that is the truth. Where now people, the next generation, they have higher expectation. They have a different standard. So we can say, I wish it was like the old days, but it's not. So we have to meet them where they're at, and they're expecting our culture to be more empathetic, more caring. They might only stay for a couple of years, get trained, and go somewhere else. We just have to understand that. That's the reality we're operating in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And unless we have better candidates, our country's going to get into a place where we already have a shortage of police out there, and it's causing all kinds of havoc all over the place already. That's only going to continue to get worse. And
we can go down the rabbit hole further on this another time, but because I have larger perspectives on that. But I agree with you. I think a lawless society or a society without law and order inevitably falls apart. And I think we're seeing some of that right now. So it's really important. We're at a really interesting crossroads. I think it's a lot of hope and positivity. I hope people are having that. I understand the despair and the stress and the worry, but I'm a positive person. I see a lot of solutions and hope out there. So I hope other people see that too.
Absolutely. And I'm a big believer that the light always wins. And the work that you're doing, the book that you wrote, teaching people how they can have this healthy culture, have the wellness, have that strong culture, have all the things that they need, that strong leadership in there. That is one of the keys to make sure that we move into this direction that we need to go, and we make sure that the light wins.
Light wins. I love that. I love that.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Chad. I'm going to make sure that I put a link into the show notes. You guys can go out to Amazon, buy a copy of his book. Chad, share the title with us one more time so everybody can hear it.
The Holy Trinity of Successful and Healthy Police Organizations, Improving Leadership, Culture, and Wellness.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining me.
You keep up the good work, Katie. Seriously, you're doing a great job. I don't want to hijack your show, but everybody needs to work with Katie because I started working with her.
And everybody needs to read Chad's book.
Incredible soul. Seriously, you're doing great stuff. Keep it up.
Oh, thank you, Chad. You are as well. And thank you, audience, for joining us today on the first ever visual. As you can see, I got my high-tech blankies over here. You didn't get to see that on the audio, but now you do. So thank you. And remember, chronic doesn't have to mean permanent. See you guys next time.